thinking about this concept, man, about the global market, man. I be talking to a lot of guys about traveling, and everybody kind of noticing like a lot of the women are changing, and you know, and one thing that is evident is that social media for the passport bros, man. Social media it's changed the game. It has changed the game. Hold on, let me see. He said, "Where are you? Hit it. Where you hit it? Yeah, I'm headed to work right now. Just got back from Colombia. What was that? Wednesday? Yeah, it was Wednesday. But yeah, man. Social media has changed the game, and I've noticed this, whether it's in Africa, Colombia, wherever. A lot of the women, you know, the way they act and respond, like they have a lot more options. Um, I was chopping it up with this Ethiopian chick, and she was basically like pressing me, like like what basically if I want to be in a relationship or what I'm trying to be on, because she like, well, um, if I delete, I met her on a dating app. She like, well, if I delete the account, she was like, I need to know, like, what I mean, we in a relationship or something like that, or else, I want to, be open to talking to other people. And so, that's the mindset of a lot of women, man. They want, they want to keep their options open. I'm a little bit, I guess you could say, old school. Like I like to just kind of get to know somebody, one at a time. I don't really be trying to get to know too many chicks, because, what I mean, I just don't have time for it. But um, the fact that a lot of these women are learning about these dating apps overseas, we have to talk about competition, man. We have to talk about it. Um, back in the beginning, like, when I used to go to DR, and, DR, I feel like the women used to talk to damn near anybody, you know, anybody, and for the most part, we were competing. We were competing with the local men for the most part, or let's just say other men from our country that travel to the same places, if anything, right? But in totality, it really wasn't no competition for a lot of guys, especially in countries like Colombia, maybe DR, and even some parts of Africa as well. Some of the older white guys that kind of been to these places first, like some of these places was like their heaven. And then once black guys came, and a lot of them kind of sense like it's become more competitive, whether with money. It's basically money and looks. I'm just gonna get to it. Money and looks. You see, resources trump everything. Global paper gets your money up. Don't worry about social media. Too many brothers losing in 2024 when there is money falling from the sky. Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. But even guys with money now are being, challenged by guys with money that may be more attractive too. This is why this is important, because the movement, the ideology of the travel movement was, one, explore your options overseas, in that you didn't have to, you didn't necessarily have to go through the hoops that you would to attract a woman in the Matrix. And so you've seen a lot of guys having success overseas, out of shape, you know, old in a lot of instances where you might see a 60-year-old man with a woman that's in her 20s, or, let's just say 20 to 25-year age difference. That was kind of, you were seeing a lot of that, but now it's a little different. It's a little different. So let's talk about what the global market looks like. What we see now, I'll use like Colombia and like Africa and like some countries in Africa, right? In Colombia, a lot of the women now, because I think the Emirates, had got a route there. So you got the Middle Eastern guys, you got, guys from Europe, Americans, and Mexicans, all these groups of people. So, now these women have more to choose from versus their own men or even American men. Now, being an American, coming from, the greatest country in the world, it has its advantages. But, women are, at the end of the day, whether it's Colombia, men have enough money to send them Colombian pesos regardless of the country. So, and then too, a lot of guys from these countries may come from longer money. You got countries like, let's say, like Nigerians, how they do in Africa. They can cheat the system because a lot of them, come with illegal money. People from these Middle Eastern, even in Nigeria, they got oil money too. So you got people with long money, elites, where women have access to, like they never had before. And so, if you're American, specifically a Black American, like, unfortunately, point. A lot of guys get into the money, get into crypto, a lot of different things, sports betting. I know people are doing well with sports betting now. So I know a lot of guys are getting to the money, but, for this passport bro movement to kind of work, because a lot of people that are against the movement, they see it failing. But for the movement to work, we have to start talking about competing on a global stage, which we can do as Americans. I think, shout out to brothers like, Skylar, also known as 1MT. He tries to promote and help brothers, get to a point where you are an elite individual. Now, when it comes to the global market, we can compete financially. As Americans, we can compete financially. So that's the good part. Now, the other caveat to financially is appearance, and so we need to kind of hone in on that. This is why, I think Austin Holloman raised concerns about Black men, specifically American Black men, not really being a first option anymore, because I think Austin came in towards the latter end of, like, let's say the Brazil wave and so forth. But in a lot of these places, Europe too, I mean, American black men, um, there, there was a higher desire because of whether we was rare or exotic, or wasn't really a lot of other groups of men that women had access to, especially like in the Americas. But now with the global market, you got, I mean, you just got more men in the game with social media and things of that nature. Because a lot of the glory days of any country, most of the glory days guys talk about was before Instagram, was before TikTok. Maybe before some of these actual dating websites. Excuse my phone. So to compete on a global market, we have to talk about physical appearance. So, just some basic things I'm seeing, like, having your hair cut. Having your hair cut. Details, like women are constantly comparing their options. They're constantly comparing their options. So you want to make sure you're well groomed. Having nice outfits. A lot of times, countries like DR and other countries where a lot of us may just dress casual, maybe some shorts, some flip flops, or just just something real basic. All that stuff is cool, but it's like things are just getting a little more competitive now. So we have to kind of step it up. And I think that as an influencer and other influencers, we're gonna have to lead by example. That's why I think I did a stream a couple of days ago. We were, I think me and HB going global. We was talking about cars and jewelry and stuff like that. Things that some of us did in the U.S. Whether we did it for ourselves or we did it because women like it. But I've always drove a foreign whip. I used to wear jewelry, but I stopped wearing jewelry. But and I used to do things like go shopping every weekend and things like that. But I just found myself wasting money. But at the same time, when you're out there and guys aren't looking for wives, but a lot of guys are in a casual dating market, or even maybe a girlfriend market. The same rules apply. The same rules will apply overseas, unfortunately, like it will in the U.S. Now, the biggest difference is that you get something in return. That's always been the difference with overseas women versus United States. Women are the same. They are wired the same, but in most of these other countries, you get something in return. That's the main thing. It's a deal on both sides. She knows what she's getting. You know what you're getting, and it's a deal. That's the main difference. And it's been kind of frustrating, for a lot of guys, with this reality, because we didn't really go into traveling, not necessarily thinking we have to compete like we would in the United States. Or I should say that we went in not really thinking that there were competition in general. A lot of people, including myself, we just thought that the allure of the possibility of marrying a man from the U.S. and coming to the United States, or being able to provide a particular lifestyle they're not accustomed to. Um, you know, for some women, it's a different sexual experience. Some women, it's meeting men that can help boost their social media profile. Whatever that case is, a lot of us just thought that American men was probably for a lot of women the end all be all, and it's not the case. I know African women, a lot of African women, they have their groups, they share information, and a lot of them will say that they prefer men from like Sweden or Germany. What's another country they talk about? Sweden, Germany, Switzerland. Those men are looked at as being more generous. They're looked at as being more generous than American men. A lot of them call American men cheap. What other men they call cheap? Maybe Canadian men. But yeah, American men, we're not, even though we have the highest earning potential as Americans and we come from the greatest country, a lot of them look at us as cheap, which could be a good thing, which could be a bad thing. Because that means that if those men from Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, if they're more generous, a lot of times we're going to look at that as they're either simping or they're being a take advantage of, which sometimes that's the case. Or they doing, they doing things that they really don't have to do. But at the end of the day, they're distracting the women. They're distracting the women because they're dangling money over them. You know what I mean? And that's part of the competition, That's part of what makes it competitive. So I don't think we should be talking about competing as far as, being more generous and things like that. But depending on how bad you want a certain chick or a certain group of women, you might have to compete in that arena. Let me know what y'all think about that. You might have to compete with that arena. I have to shift gears and think about how I want to approach travel moving forward, because if I'm competing on a global market now, I have to really present myself in the best form. And something I was thinking about, the pop, you guys seen the Pop the Balloon shows or whatever, and this most recent one, a lot of people been reacting to, was this guy. He had on like a polo, some slacks. It was real fitted, and pretty much most of the chicks popped their balloon right away. And a lot of them said that they didn't like his outfit, but everything else, he sounded like a great guy. And it made me think, because the message was first impressions. Now he did have a bad fit on, you know what I mean? And it was a bad fit for that environment, because me and my homies, if I would have, he would have got roasted by like people from my circle, the fit. So it was a bad fit, but that Pop the Balloon, the first impression applies to women all over the world. And so I was thinking to myself, like, man, if I did the Pop the Balloon show, what would I wear? What would I wear? And I want you guys to ask yourself that question. Just ask yourself that question. And some people probably be like, man, I ain't finna be trying to conform, or, I'm gonna be myself. But just as an exercise, ask yourself, if you did a Pop the Balloon challenge, what would you wear? And I started to think about it. I'm like, damn, okay. these are the type of fits I wear. Like if I'm going to another country, this is what I wear if I'm just going to the supermarket or going to work. Um, sometimes I'm out running errands and I may just wake up, brush my teeth. I may be going down the street, right? I may not, make sure my hair not too crazy. So I'm just running out. But I may see a cute chick and I may approach her, but in my mind, I'm thinking my appearance is how I look like right now. But in actuality it's not. You know what I mean? First impression is so important. So yeah, if I did the pop the balloon challenge, man, I would really I would really I would come a certain way, because I could come real professional. I could throw on a nice suit if I want the business look. But then some chicks might be like, okay, they might put me in a certain category, or I could be real urban or whatever the case, or in between. So do that exercise and ask yourself, if you was on a pop the balloon challenge, what would you wear? How would you present yourself? And take that information and apply it to future travel overseas, because the pop the balloon challenge, the nature of women applies all over the world. I've seen pop the balloon challenges in Africa. It's the same thing. I haven't seen any Latin countries do it, but it's the same concept. It's all about first impression. Another thing is, another guy had told me about Instagram, because he pulls women on Instagram a lot, and I really don't be wanting to put nothing. I really don't like putting too much on Instagram. But he was like, man, if you want chicks off Instagram, like, you have to build your page a certain way. And unfortunately, he right. He right. The same thing with dating profiles. You gotta really present yourself, because we're in a global market right now. Unfortunately, this is why, I try to travel to places and give intel on places that a lot that don't have too much attention at the moment. I went to Tumaco in Colombia. In my opinion, Bogota, even though it is an international city, is not a city that really, really has been really explored. Kenya is wide open. Like, European guys been traveling to Kenya for a long time. So, and Kenya is a fun country, but it is a world market thing. That's why a lot of guys, with a lot of these African chicks, they'll be talking to them one day, not talking to them the next day. They talk to so many men. They just have been all, they're in a world market. Kenyan men at this point barely have a chance with their own women. The access is so crazy. The difference between, let's say, women in Kenya and women in the United States is that women in the United States, or in general, women in the United States, they don't open themselves up to the world market because they view the United States as the creme de la creme. In a lot of ways, they look like they're dating down if they're opening themselves up to the world market, because everything is here. Everything is here. So that's what we're up against. Just saying you're American and having that passport is just not enough. It's not enough. I do want to incorporate more lifestyle type content, going more in depth on this. Women do care about you smelling good all over. They do care about how you're smelling, how good you're smelling. Women do care about what you wear. I got a homeboy. He got some jacked up teeth, and we went to Colombia. And he was like, "Yeah, bro." He was like, "Man, I'm thinking about getting some veneers, man, because you see women do it. You see a lot of more people getting veneers or getting certain cosmetic procedures done for their smile, and all that stuff is necessary. All those things is necessary. But I don't think guys should panic or worry, especially my Black Americans. Like I said, we make the most money in theory when we're on vacation. We should be the ones that's able to spend the most. I pushed a lot of things talking about budget traveling and going to places where your dollar goes the furthest, but it ends up being a mute thing when that particular place is just a popular destination from all men from all over the world, because your dollars to the euros is pretty much on par. It's pretty much on par. When I'm going back to Thailand and Philippines just to see how things have changed over the last 5 years. Some people still say it's still how it was. Some people saying it changed a lot, but I want to see. Those that are curious in Africa, been to Africa. Southern Africa is pretty much ruined. Trying to compete there, you're competing with the likes of Nigerians. You're competing with the likes of them. They have the reputation. They have a certain reputation when it comes to the women. Compete with that, you got to be ready to flex. Eastern Africa, like I said earlier, a lot of the European guys, they are being more generous with money. They're being more generous with money, so that's just hard. That's just going to be difficult for Americans because we're not really we're more tight with money. We're more tight with money, so our dollar goes further. And if we're not trying to be tight with money, then the focus will have to be on women that are not in major cities. And I hate to say that women from the suburbs or villages or rural areas or whatever you want to call it will be your best bet. But for guys that are tight with money, that is going to be the best bet, because the women that have good internet data connection where they could be on these social media apps all the time, they're open to a world market. And guys, any city with an international airport, or airport at that matter, they got access to the world market. Maybe that's another discussion. Especially cities with an international airport, they got access to the world market. Before I go, I'll mention like a few international cities, like whether it's Kenya, Nairobi, Colombia, Cartagena, Bogota, Medellin. Those are all have all international airports. In Brazil, you got Rio and Sao Paulo international airports. That's why when I go to cities outside of Rio and Sao Paulo, I have more success. So let that be something. Let that be something the passport bros think about. When traveling to these places, wherever country. Go to other cities outside of the city that has the international airport. You can fly to other smaller cities. Um, highly consider that. This is why when I go to countries, those that follow me, they know I've traveled to several countries several cities in a particular country. So, we might have to start avoiding cities that have international airports. If you're not trying to compete on a world stage with men from other countries. But let me know what you guys think. It's your boy No Excuse on the Passport Bros podcast. Check you guys out later. Peace out.